All right, guys, there are three interesting things going on right now in the world of college football. We've got the aftermath of the Michigan State fight. I'm sure you guys have all seen the videos. We've got Auburn looking for a new head coach, and we've got a major injury to Nolan Smith, the Georgia pass rusher, the former number 1 overall recruit a few years ago, current top 20 NFL draft prospect. But first, when it comes to this Michigan State fight, guys, I've been dealing with these copyright strikes. Unfortunately, I got a copyright strike last year, and they don't remove the strikes ever. So I really can't show any video and take any chances on it, but I'm sure we've all seen them. The three main videos, we've got the Michigan defensive back skipping into the tunnel with all the Michigan State players. Probably not going to end well. We get the first video, which it looked like the Michigan State players were kind of just roughing up, the Michigan player. And honestly, I didn't think that was a big deal just looking at it from the one angle. And then we get the other angle, and it looks like a total assault. So, guys, just my overall take on the Michigan State thing. Number one, it is kind of a breath of fresh air with this rivalry. I've seen so many rivalries in college football where this is a real rivalry. These teams hate each other. And hopefully Michigan State can come back to being good. They've had such a horrible year, and that was such a bland, uncompetitive football game. Michigan versus Michigan State, probably the craziest in-state rivalry right now. Those two teams just, oh my goodness. And whose fault is it? I'll say, obviously, the Michigan kid. He shouldn't have went in there. I mean, he was gloating, he was talking, whatever. Michigan State players are not going to be happy. They just scored 7 points. They just lost on the road to their rival. And it gets a little bit too far. I don't think there's any problems with roughing him up a little bit. I mean, obviously, if it's 6 or 7 on 1. But again, you're going into a tunnel, gloating in the face of the other team when you're supposed to be out. We know Michigan's tunnels had issues with this where there's only one tunnel in and out, so both teams have to go through it. Normally, they'll do the losing team with Michigan State goes through it while all the Michigan players stay on the field. That's what was kind of happening, but the Michigan player has to go in. And then, of course, Harbaugh, there's just no accountability from Harbaugh. I mean, why is your player going in when everyone else is out on the field? I'm not victim blaming, but I'm just saying Harbaugh comes out, immediately plays the victim. It's assault. It's terrible. We understand that. We saw the second video. We're not saying it's not bad. There's suspensions. But I don't know, man. It's a situation where it's like, why is one player from Michigan going in there to gloat? And there was some pretty interesting stuff. There's one video. It looked like... So this is Michigan State's director of football operations in one of the videos. He was in the tunnel as the fight was going on, and he did a little skip to my Lou, kind of a weird run to the camera to block out the camera. And this was very smart. He immediately privates his Twitter because he knew he was going to get inundated with Michigan, fans just completely tearing him up. There's been several threads on Michigan boards that want this dude fired because he saw a fight was happening, and then people are like, you should step in and stop it. I mean, I don't really know. These are college kids. I don't know what he's going to do, but he immediately goes to block the camera so that they can't film the fight going on in Michigan State in a 6-on-1 attack on the Michigan defensive back, and then he privates his Twitter. So there's something that happened there. So guys, overall with this fight, obviously Michigan State goes too far. I do think it is a breath of fresh air to get an actual rivalry. We see all these rivalries where it's kind of ridiculous. Like, think about like USC, UCLA, really? But this is an actual rivalry. These teams hate each other. Hopefully Michigan State can be better. It's very clear the Michigan kid should have never went in there. And then obviously Michigan State, you can't, bludgeon the kid. I mean, my goodness, obviously. And Michigan State's getting they're getting about 95 to 99% of the blame when it comes to this situation. I think Harbaugh did a really good job controlling the narrative right during the postgame, coming out and saying his players got assaulted, things like that. And that is honestly what happened. So definitely a crazy story in the world of college football. I believe when it comes to the 4 players that got suspended for Michigan State, One of them is a key contributor. One of them plays, sparingly, and then the other two are, they don't really play their backups. So that's just what I got from that. And then, of course, the situation with Auburn, just the total dead man walking. It was, like I said, guys, Auburn is legitimately a dumpster fire. 1 year into his tenure, they're trying to set him up so they can fire him with cause so they don't have to pay the buyout. It blows up in the boosters' faces, so now they're stuck with him this year. And obviously, Auburn's not good. They're losing games left and right. And they end up firing him, the head coach, and they have to pay around a $15 million buyout or something like that. But I always like looking at the odds for the next head coach. Hugh Freeze, to me, does not move the needle at all. It's funny with Hugh Freeze signing that massive extension. Isn't Hugh Freeze at Liberty right now? He signed a massive extension. Those extensions with head coaches mean nothing. He signed like an 8-year contract extension, and here he is, the favorite. He doesn't move the needle for me. I think Lane Kiffin would be a decent hire for Auburn. There was definitely a big argument going on between Auburn and Ole Miss fans between, who has the better job, what's the more attractive job. Would Lane Kiffin leave Ole Miss for Auburn? It seems kind of lateral. And, I mean, if I had a gun to my head and I had to say, I would say Auburn is slightly a better job than Ole Miss, but I think you're splitting hairs. It's not, Lane Kiffin could say, no, I'm fine at Ole Miss. I'm a good fit here. Deion Sanders, I think Deion Sanders is waiting for FSU. You guys should have seen, or I'm sure a lot of people did, Jackson State had College Game Day and Deion Sanders was doing an interview. And they asked him, would you entertain Power 5 offers? And he's like, yeah, of course. He was honest about it, but it's like, I mean, if he's saying that publicly, you got to believe. Maybe he stays at Jackson State next year. I know they're undefeated. You got to believe he's close to jumping to a Power 5. And there are a lot of Power 5s that would want him. I still think FSU is the fit, but who knows? FSU's kind of had a decent season. Maybe they don't want to fire their coach. But yeah, I would say right now it's Hugh Freeze or Lane Kiffin. Some of those other, Matt Rule would be interesting. I don't know how much, he was a really, really good college coach, especially with a roster that really wasn't that talented at Auburn. It is tough recruiting against Alabama in state, but you're going to get some talent there that would be better than his Baylor roster. And then he was a joke with Carolina, the Panthers, Matt Rule. But still, you got to focus on college. Mark Stoops is there. I don't think he would want to leave Kentucky, although I'm just speculating. Kevin Steele, that would be a dud. Oh, my goodness. So those are just kind of some candidates there. And then we do have the situation, kind of a major effect this could have on the playoff, on the SEC race, even on this game this coming week. So Nolan Smith, he doesn't put up a ton of stats, but he definitely is a disruptor, and those pass rushers can be game changers. He's out for the year. He was projected to be a top 20 pick. I believe he has 3 sacks this season, and that is a pretty big loss. It's not catastrophic. It's nothing like that. Normally, Georgia and how their defense is, the sum of the parts is really greater than any individual player. It's very rare you see a Georgia defensive player put up crazy stats. That's just even last year when they had the 5 first-round picks all from defense, really no one put up crazy stats. It's kind of all of it is a collective effort. I mean, look at Trayvon Walker, the number 1 overall pick. I don't know how many sacks he had like 4 sacks, and he was the number 1 overall pick. So, with Georgia, they recruit well enough to replace it, but this is a veteran, I believe a senior, and a possible first-round pick who's a really elite athlete, really good pass rusher. That is a big, big loss for Georgia. And then, of course, we do have the college football playoff rankings being released tonight. Guys, I gave my top 5 already. I completely analyzed it. I could see a number of things. I could see Tennessee at 1. I could see Ohio State at 1. I can't see Georgia at 1. Georgia's resume is too low at this point. And again, this is all really meaningless because if Georgia beats Tennessee, then they're going to be 1. So if you're a Georgia fan, you really shouldn't be angry. But if we're just talking about right now, to me, it's Tennessee and Ohio State splitting hairs. Georgia is the clear 3. Michigan is, although I don't know, well, I'd say Georgia's the clear 3, Michigan's the clear 4, Clemson's the clear 5, Alabama is 6, TCU is 7. And I know people are going to be upset that TCU is below a one-loss Alabama team, and they're going to say that's SEC bias. But guys, when you look at everything, personally, I would have no problems putting TCU in front of Alabama because Alabama's also struggled in other games. But like, factor in some of TCU's wins and their overall game control. It has not been impressive. So if you want to knock Alabama for barely beating Texas, I mean, you can knock TCU in 5 different games. They were losing against Kansas State by 11 at half, and they got lucky because the starter got knocked out. They were lucky against Kansas. Their starting quarterback got knocked out. I don't want to go in on TCU because I would love to see a TCU-Ohio State playoff matchup, because we remember back in 2014 when Ohio State got in front of TCU, there'd be nothing better than an Ohio State-TCU 1v4 matchup, in my opinion. But TCU would have to go undefeated based on what I'm seeing right now. I think it would be very surprising if TCU lost the game, even if they won the Big 12, to make the playoff, because you're looking at a minimum of 2 SEC teams. You have a Big 10 mess right now, with very likely the Ohio State-Michigan loser being a one-loss team. Would TCU, they would be a conference champ as a one-loss team, get in over a non-conference champ Michigan, whose only loss is Ohio State? I highly doubt it. Unless TCU starts being more impressive. I mean, guys, again, like, what is TCU, 9.5-point favorites this week? It's like their FPI is 14. I know FPI isn't everything. The metrics aren't everything, but TCU's defense leaves a lot to be desired. And another thing, I didn't realize how bad Oregon's defense was. Apparently, Oregon's defense is not very good, but Oregon is probably going to be number 8. And then we're looking at, more Pac-12 teams. Maybe USC coming in at number 5, number 9, or number 10, and then UCLA. But UCLA, they're going to knock a little bit, I believe, for the schedule. The non-conference schedule is horrible. They've gotten some nice wins, but it's going to be some form of those 3 Pac-12 teams. And then maybe the other team, possible top 10 team, Ole Miss. They really have no good wins, especially after Kentucky just got annihilated. So, I don't know. We'll have to see what the committee ends up doing, but I am fairly certain that Georgia will be 3, Michigan will be 4, Clemson will be 5, Alabama will be 6, TCU will be 7. And then it just comes down to, do you value the best win? Then put Tennessee number 1. Do you value overall metrics, overall, when you combined every single game? Because nobody talks about Tennessee's bad performance against Pittsburgh. Early in the season, they struggled some. Ohio State, you can say they struggled against Penn State, and they did, but it is a fact of a matter where they were up 44-24, and Penn State scored a garbage time touchdown, but I understand they did struggle. I said Ohio State was going to struggle. I said there was no way Ohio State was going to cover the spread against Penn State. I'm not saying Ohio State's perfect. They have massive issues with Ryan Day's play calling, but right now it's an imperfect. All these teams are imperfect. They all have issues. Tennessee's pass defense is an issue. Georgia, I think Georgia's offensive explosiveness is an issue with Stetson Bennett. So they all have issues, but it's like, who's the best? I think it's either going to be Tennessee or Ohio State. We'll see. But guys, the Michigan State thing, is it assault? I mean, I don't think, let's not send these kids to jail. I mean, my goodness, obviously it's not a good situation. They're being suspended indefinitely for the rest of the season, as they should be. They should be. But I think, we remember when Myles Garrett had that incident, people seemed to really clutch their pearls. And I know it was a bad incident, but people were like, he should be suspended for his career. Like, that's what people do. They overreact right when something happens, and then 3 months later, you're like, yeah, maybe that was dumb, or just kind of an overreaction. So we'll see what happens. Michigan State is definitely more at fault than Michigan, 100%. And that tunnel thing, I mean, the tunnel has been an issue over the past few years because the teams come out and go in the same way. You would think it wouldn't have been an issue in this scenario, but the Michigan player goes back with the Michigan State, team right after they lost. He's skipping as he goes into the tunnel. We can assume there was some gloating that went on there. Let's be real about it. So, and obviously, that doesn't give you the right to assault him. But, not much good can come from a situation like that when you're talking about one team just beat their rival and now they're gloating in front of their face and it's 10-on-1. It's not going to be a good situation. So guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.